It's showtime.
Hey everyone, Django Fett here, hunting down games, comics, TV shows, movies, and more. And with The Mandalorian revealing Boba Fett in the TV show, and Boba Fett having his own TV show now, and me being a Boba Fett fan, I must talk about the Boba Fett stories starting with this collection, and who knows, I might review more Boba Fett stories down the road. So let me read the back of this book, then get into these stories. The most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy. Collected here are 9 stories of Boba Fett's high-risk and high-adventure missions, from settling diplomatic disputes with extreme prejudice, to a bounty hunter free-for-all, from a duel with Darth Vader to dealing with Boba Fett imposters. If the price is right, there is no job too perilous for the mysterious man in Mandalorian armor. So the Omnibus came out in March 2010 and contains Boba Fett Enemy of the Empire, Underworld the Yavin Basilica, Empire number 7 Sacrifice, Empire number 28 Wreckage, Boba Fett Overkill, Boba Fett Salvage, Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction, Boba Fett Death Lies and Treachery, and Boba Fett Agent of Doom. And if you guys didn't know, I discussed a bunch of these stories in the State of Star Wars podcast, so I'll put a link in the description so you can check out the YouTube channel and you will find these discussed stories there. So let's start with the first story, Boba Fett Enemy of the Empire, and this is written by John Wagner and drawn by Ian Gibson and John Nadeau, and is set 3 years before the Battle of Yavin. Boba Fett is hired by Darth Vader to track down an ex-Imperial who has something that Vader wants back. So let's just say Vader doesn't trust Boba at first, and they get in a duel at the end, and it seems like Boba would have won in the end, which as a Boba Fett fan myself, I find utterly ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, it's a great fight, but the idea that Boba Fett would be an all-powerful, Force-sensitive Dark Lord of the Sith is utter nonsense. They just hint at it at the end, but Boba decides not to do it because the whole Empire would be out for him. I'm sorry, but it just makes no sense. But anyway, it's a good story with some alright artwork, especially in the final issue, which would seem to be a pretty good artwork, and the battle at the end was really cool. And it would be an attributing reason for Vader to hire Boba later in the Empire Strikes Back movie. Next we have Underworld the Yavin Basilica, and this is written by Mike Kennedy and drawn by Carlos Miglia, and is set 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. I'll keep this short because this is an extremely long story, even though it's 5 issues. This stars Han Solo, Chewbacca, Lando, Bossk, Dengar, IG-88, Zuckuss, Greedo, and Boba Fett as they are hired by different Hutts to retrieve the mysterious Yavin Basilica. And I did not like this story, as it was way too long for its own good and was mostly bored with it. The artwork is very cartoonish. It's fine, I guess, but I wasn't a big fan of it per se. And the characters were just really exaggerated to me. Only the last part of the story I liked, but this story does not need to be put in the Boba Fett centric Omnibus, because Boba Fett is barely in this story, so what's the point? Sacrifice is written by John Wagner and drawn by Cam Kennedy and set after the Battle of Yavin. On the planet Solum, a rebellion takes place against a ruthless dictator, and Boba is tasked to hunt down the rebellion leader. And the story is really good. Cam Kennedy's artwork really amplifies it, plus it's not colored in his usual coloring pattern that we have grown accustomed to in the Dark Empire series, but done in a regular format. And it's nice seeing that change. Plus Boba is excellent, and John Wagner really understands Boba Fett unlike any other, because he's out to do a job no matter what, and not here to chit-chat or do idle talk. And he doesn't say a word in this story and outguns everyone in his path to get what he wants. And it's just amazing to see. And a nice ending, and you feel a little sad for his character because you see him as nothing more than a hired gun. Wreckage is the next story, and this is written by Ron Mars and drawn by Adriana Mello, and is set 6 to 7 months after the Battle of Yavin. In this, he must get a holo from a destroyed Star Destroyer and runs into many obstacles along the way. A nice short Boba Fett story that doesn't end well for the Imperial who hired him. Boba Fett Overkill is another short story written by Thomas Andrews, aka Jeremy Barlow, and drawn by Francisco Ruiz Velasco, and is set 9 months after the Battle of Yavin. A young and upcomer lieutenant of the Empire wants to increase his rank and power, so he hires Boba in an attempt to finish the job, in a neat manner that he desires only for Boba to go apeshit and literally do overkill in the process, destroying everything along his way to finish the job. A good story, not a fan of the artwork per se, but I did really like the ending, Very much a Boba Fett type of ending that leaves the Imperial lieutenant scared shitless instead of happy in the end. Boba Fett Salvage is written by John Wagner and drawn by Carlos Exquero? Sorry for all the mispronunciations throughout this review. And set 1 year after the Battle of Yavin. Receiving a distress signal, Boba, with one of his bounty prisoners, goes into a suspicious empty freighter, only to discover it's not so empty. Very short as per usual and kind of dark, as the prisoner that Boba uses gets horribly killed by these insects that can burrow and hatch into people's bodies and also melt armor, so Boba has to escape ASAP. Carlos' artwork is pretty good in this and nails the classic look, as it did come out in 1997, which makes sense, and actually originally published in The Wizard magazine, which is interesting. Boba Fett Twin Engines Instruction is written by Andy Mangels and drawn by John Nadeau, and is set 5 years after the Battle of Yavin. When Boba finds out a doppelganger by the name of Jodo Kast is using an identical Mandalorian armor, and most importantly Boba's name to get jobs, Boba must go out of his way to stop this son of a bitch from getting away with this. A pretty cool story, and I like the artwork, but I did notice Jodo's armor changed quite a lot from orange to yellow to red, and exactly looking like Boba's armor. So not consistent whatsoever in coloring of these armors, which is a bad error. Now with Jodo Kast, he was not actually a Mandalorian, but repainted his armor to look identical to Fett's in order to gain notoriety and demand larger payments. He worked for the Empire, Black Sun, New Republic, pretty much anyone. He was featured in a role-playing adventure game and mentioned in a few other stories, and even being an unlockable character in the Masters of Terras Kasi video game, which I need to play. Next, we have 3 one-shots collected in one story called Death, Lies, and Treachery, and these include Bounty on Barracuda, When the Fat Lady Sings, and Murder Most Foul. All 3 of these one-shots connect into one complete story. This story was written by John Wagner and drawn by Cam Kennedy, and has the signature Dark Empire coloring style we are all familiar with, and this story is set 10 years after the Battle of Yavin. In this, Boba must hunt down a pirate who has irked some of the Hutts and want him dead. So Boba gets him through a relatively interesting fight for Boba, and the Hutts practically do away with him. And later on, we find out that Barracuda has a brother named Raikuda, who finds out about this news and is out to kill everyone, Hutts and Boba Fett included. And let's just say Raikuda is a much tougher opponent than his brother and anything that Boba has put up with in the past. This was a great story, and just great to see Boba challenged in a way that he didn't expect, and we didn't expect too, and almost lost to an extent, but we know who Boba Fett is. But bringing in the amazing artwork by Cam Kennedy with his signature Dark Empire coloring style really fits and really made this story much more violent than I thought it would be. And finally, the last story is Boba Fett Agent of Doom. This is written by the legendary John Ostrander this time, and drawn by Cam Kennedy once again, but without the signature coloring style. And the story was also set 10 years after the Battle of Yavin, when the last survivor of the Gilmaroid species wants revenge on Imperials who annihilated his species in horrific ways, very much akin to the Jewish people during the Holocaust in the World War II era. He hires Boba for a measly price that offends Boba at first. But this guy says, "Know that you are Boba Fett. Once that was a near to conjure fear. Yes, it was. That was before the Jedi fed you to the Sarlacc. That was before Han Solo escaped you so many times. Some now ask, is it the same man beneath the helmet? Many species put contract out on torque and mirth. No one will touch it. Impossible, they say, but Fett could do it. Yes, he could. If you do this, it will not be because of the money. It will be so that all know who is Boba Fett. Yes." And Boba's answer is something that I didn't expect. Yes. This just shows so much about Boba's character and his evolution after Return of the Jedi, and not just being a quiet bounty hunter, but someone who has honor and wants justice to be done, and frankly, his name to be known again. There are just so many things you can take away from this alone, and that's how I interpret it. And because these Imperials are horrific madmen and psychopaths, they get their just desserts that we want to see badly. I've never seen that so effectively shown in a Star Wars comic before now. And I have to say, this is my favorite Boba Fett comic story of all time. It's phenomenal, and the ending is just, mwah, a thing of beauty. Now let's do a roundup and what I thought of this omnibus as a whole. It's a really good omnibus, and if you're a fan of Boba Fett, you need to read these awesome comic stories. The Underworld story really hurt this omnibus for me, but the rest of the stories are really good, with Agent of Doom, Death, Lies, and Treachery, and Sacrifice being my absolute favorites. So I'm giving the Boba Fett Omnibus a... There's still a couple of other Boba Fett comic stories out there like Blood Ties that may be worth reviewing in the future, but for now, I really wanted to review this omnibus. Because as you guys know, I'm a big fan of Boba Fett. Hell, one of my cats is named Boba. And the next omnibus review will be the Star Wars Adventures Omnibus. I've never read any of these stories and wanted to read out of curiosity mostly, so might as well review it too. So don't forget to please like this video, comment down below, tell me what you think of this particular omnibus and what you think about the Boba Fett comic series in the comment section below. And subscribe to my channel Django Fett if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next review. Peace.